Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. We begin in the U.S. state of Missouri. A grand jury's decision not to charge white police officer Darren Wilson in the shooting death of African-American teenager Michael Brown resulted in more violence and destruction in the city of Ferguson. VOA's Ken Farabaugh has more on how, despite pleas from community leaders, the reaction was anything but peaceful.
Ferguson, Missouri is burning. The reaction to the decision not to charge Officer Darren Wilson was almost immediate violence by some in the crowd that assembled outside the Ferguson Police Department.
You are all unlawfully assembled if you are in the middle of the street.
Police responded with tear gas. And protesters reacted by setting fires. Soon after the announcement, things here escalated quickly. Behind me, you can see that we've got two police cars fully engulfed in flames, and this is all coming as riot police are fully deployed here, ready to tackle whatever these protesters throw at them. Violence was not on the agenda for the Ferguson resident who goes by the name Django.
I pray for the best, because me personally, I'm not going to go destroy nothing. I want it to be a better outcome,
How y'all doing, officer?
A prevailing concern was that the violence would overshadow efforts to resolve the racial tension Django says exists between Ferguson's residents and its police force.
We got a reason to be out here. We live here. This is our area. So that means if he got away with it, he gonna get away with it, he gonna get away with it, he gonna get away with it.
The lesson is that all of us need to be at the table talking. And it shouldn't be just one race trying to speak up for the inequities that we see.
Mark Esters found himself trapped behind a police line formed to keep people away from the heart of the escalating unrest in Ferguson. Though he was disappointed by the violence, he was not surprised.
This is something that's been a culmination of years of inequity.
Scenes of looting and Ferguson aflame
It's bullets in the car, move back!
made this St. Louis suburb look more like a war zone than a small town. It was overwhelming to Julie Cruz.
I've had enough. I've had enough of racism and bigotry, and St. Louis can do better.
Once the fires are put out and the violence ends, Ferguson will need to be rebuilt by repairing the structures that were damaged, destroyed, or looted, and by improving the relationship between the police force and its citizens.
We have the right to fight for our freedom!
Kane Farabaugh, VOA News, Ferguson, Missouri.
Well, for more on the situation, we're joined live via Skype by VOA's Alberto Pimienta in Ferguson, Missouri. Alberto, give us the very latest.
Well, Vincent, right now, the entire area of West Florissant, where some of the worst protests happened last night, it's completely closed up to everyone. This is seen right now. At the moment, it's being treated as a crime scene. So as I said, no one is being let in. We like to remind the audience that West Florissant Avenue is where one of the worst protests happened last night, but that was also the epicenter of the protests in August. And as I mentioned, this street right now at the moment completely closed up by the authorities that are investigating and treating this as a crime scene. At the same time, there's a couple dozen protesters around Clayton, Missouri. That's the city where the grand jury deliberated. But a very, very chaotic night here in Ferguson, Vincent.
And we know it's very cold today. Perhaps that has kept a few of the people away. But give us some perspective here. Looking at some of those images, it gave you the sense that the entire city was on fire. What is the reality?
Vincent, that's a really good question, and I think it's important for us to tell our audience that it was not the whole city of Ferguson. There were about 3 different areas in Ferguson that were completely just immersed in chaos and violence, and not the whole city, but those areas where these images that are now around the world happen. Those areas were like that. I mean, there was not hyping up by the media. It started up really calmly, after the announcement by the prosecutor. In about 15 minutes after, we started seeing a group of protesters trying to flip a police car, and that's when everything just turned for the worse and turned into violent protests. The authorities talked last night, and they said that they never expected this to happen.
Very, very quickly, give us the idea of the composition of the protesters. Was it all black people protesting?
It was majority black people, Vincent. I mean, we also saw some, white people, Hispanic people, Asian descent people, but the majority of the people were African American, and the authorities also said that the majority of the arrested last night, 29 arrested, were from the St. Louis area and not what some people call professional riders that come from out of town.
Well, Alberto, thank you very much for your reporting.
Thank you, Vincent.
Well, that is VOA's Alberto Pimienta reporting live via Skype from Ferguson, Missouri. Here in Washington, from the White House, President Barack Obama called on Americans to accept the grand jury's decision.
There are Americans who agree with it, and there are Americans who are deeply disappointed, even angry. It's an understandable reaction. But I join Michael's parents in asking anyone who protests this decision to do so peacefully.
And here in the studio, I'm joined by VOA's Chris Simkins, who has been following this case very, very closely. Chris, were you surprised by what you saw?
Not at all, Vincent. I think the culmination of frustration really boiled over into the streets last night in Ferguson. It's existed in that community since August. I think a lot of people in that community felt in their hearts of heart that Officer Wilson would not have been indicted. So they were prepared to let their frustrations out last night.
And Chris, for many people, including our viewers, this happened when, still in their minds, they had the decision that was made down in Florida of Trayvon Martin. And they were saying, let's see if this is going to be a bit different. Now, what could you say is behind this kind of decision?
Well, I think that there is a growing frustration in the African American community, not just in Ferguson, not just down in Florida where the incident involving Trayvon Martin, but across the country, especially in larger cities, where the issue is of police profiling African Americans and a feeling among the African American community about police brutality, especially towards young African males. And they see this as a major problem. They feel that the court system doesn't work for them and that leaders are not doing anything to address this problem and work on solutions to change it.
Now, for some, they would say there's still many police officers who do a fine job, even risk their lives. So is this are these isolated cases of white policemen targeting black people, or at least doing something like this and getting away with it?
Well, the Justice Department is looking into that now, not only in Ferguson, but they are reviewing other police departments to see if officers have adequate training, if officers are using excessive force when they don't have to. These are things that came up as a result of Ferguson, but if the review about the Ferguson Police Department shows that more training needs to be done, it could create changes nationwide at police departments across the country.
From what you've been hearing, do you get the sense that even the white communities in some of these cities get kind of frustrated by the appearance of this kind of double standards on how police handle people of different races?
I think so. There's a frustration. I think whites and blacks tend to see these type of encounters that male suspects have with police a little differently because they don't have the history of dealing with the police in the way that many African Americans in this country have. They don't have the same perceptions or trust level towards the police, say, that whites may have. So they see things through different lenses, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. So if there is anything that could come out of this particular case, what could it be?
I think it will come from a review of police departments like in Ferguson to see if training is adequate, if police are not following regulations in how they handle and approach suspects of brown skin or African Americans. I think that they will also be able to determine that these are problems that we can solve. And I think that's one of the more positive things, that we will have a review of police departments to make sure that police are conducting themselves accordingly.
Now, very quickly, does this always tend to affect how a black male reacts, say, when they are stopped by a police officer?
Sure. I think blacks that are pulled over by the police are very cautious and very afraid. And I've heard stories about them being afraid when they are pulled over. But I think there's a lot more emphasis about how to respond when you're pulled over so that you don't have a bad encounter with the police.
Well, Chris, thank you very much.